On February 28, 2026, in just 12 hours, the United States and Israel fired nearly 900 strikes at Iran. They killed the supreme leader.
Hello, I'm Mariam Mashiri. Iranian state media has confirmed its supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has been killed in his compound after the US and Israel engaged in large-scale strikes across Iran. State media reported that his daughter, son-in-law and grandchild were also killed.
ملت بزرگ ایران، روح بلند پیشوای ملت بزرگ ایران و پیشقراول امت اسلامی حضرت امام خامنه ای.
They thought it would end quickly. Instead, it triggered the most dangerous chain reaction the world has seen since the Cold War. Tonight, we're connecting every dot. From that first strike to the moment 20 countries found themselves in a shooting war, and how it's now reshaping every other conflict on the planet. Stay with me, because this one is complicated, but it makes total sense once you see the whole picture. Let's start with what actually happened on February 28th, because the mainstream coverage missed half of it. The US and Israel had been watching Iran's nuclear program for years. By early 2026, intelligence indicated Iran was weeks, not months, from weapons-grade enrichment. The window was closing. So on February 28th, they launched what military analysts are calling the largest coordinated air campaign since the Gulf War. Approximately 900 strikes in 12 hours. Targets, missile stockpiles, air defenses, military command infrastructure, and Iranian leadership. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed, along with several senior military officials. The US and Israel expected this to be decisive. A quick decapitation. Iran crippled. War over. They were wrong. Because Iran had prepared for exactly this scenario. And what happened next is what turned a bilateral strike into something that looks a lot like the beginning of a world war. Within hours of the first US-Israeli strikes, Iran launched hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles. But here's the thing. They didn't just shoot at Israel. They shot at everything, everywhere, all at once. US military bases in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UAE were all struck. Civilian infrastructure was hit in Azerbaijan, Kurdistan, and Oman. A drone struck Britain's Akrotiri base in Cyprus, and Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, the remote British-American base in the Indian Ocean. 10 countries in one night. Iran's strategy was obvious. Impose maximum pain on as many US allies as possible, all at once, to make the political cost of continuing the war unbearable. It's classic deterrence theory, except instead of threatening to escalate, Iran just escalated.
Comments from the Cypriot president on the attack. Earlier on Britain's RAF Akrotiri base on the island, the UK RAF base in Cyprus was hit by a Shahid drone, and there's minor damage which has been caused. And this is as per the Cypriot president himself. Now, UK's Ministry of Defence has confirmed to local media houses that it is responding to a suspected Iranian drone strike. Earlier, UK's Defence Secretary said that Iran's retaliatory attacks included 2 ballistic missiles fired in the direction of Cyprus. In an exclusive with BBC, John Healey said that the missiles were not targeting the Mediterranean island, but acknowledged that it demonstrated that the country's bases, personnel, military and civilians at the moment are at risk.
But here's the question that nobody was asking loudly enough. How does closing the Strait of Hormuz affect you? Even if you live nowhere near the Middle East, there's a strip of water between Iran and Oman that is, quite literally, the world's most important choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of all the world's crude oil and natural gas passes through it. Iran closed it. Over 3,000 vessels are now stranded. one of the largest maritime parking lots in history. The International Maritime Organization called it unprecedented in the modern era. Oil prices spiked, gas prices spiked, aviation routes were disrupted, financial markets went haywire. Economists are already calling this the largest supply shock since the 1970s oil crisis. And here's where it gets truly global. China gets 40% of its oil imports through the Strait of Hormuz. So now Beijing, which has avoided taking sides, is suddenly facing billions in economic losses. That matters for what comes next. Here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. While the missiles were flying, a shadow war between the great powers quietly began. And the alignments are weird. Russia has been sharing satellite imagery of US warships and aircraft with Iran, helping Tehran target American forces across the region. This is not a proxy war. This is Russia directly assisting attacks on US military assets. Ukraine, which has spent 4 years being bombed by Iranian-made drones supplied to Russia, has deployed specialists and interceptor technology to help the US and its allies defend against those same Iranian drones. Poetic in the darkest way. China is calling for a ceasefire and pressuring Iran to reopen the strait. Not out of principle, out of economics. Beijing cannot afford this disruption. At least 20 countries are now militarily involved, shooting, shielding, or quietly supplying. This isn't World War III in the traditional sense, but it may be the closest the world has come in decades to a conflict that involves every major power on Earth simultaneously. Here's something almost nobody is talking about. The Iran war isn't just a war. It's rewriting the rules of every other conflict happening right now. The US brokered Ukraine peace talks that were planned for Abu Dhabi, postponed indefinitely. The Gulf states that were supposed to host them are now fighting for their own survival. Trump's Gaza reconstruction plan, where Gulf states pledged billions to rebuild, is on hold, because those same Gulf states are now scrambling to intercept Iranian missiles. India, under Western sanctions pressure for buying Russian oil, quietly got a waiver because the US desperately needs someone to fill the energy gap while the strait is closed. As of March 23, 2026, here's where things stand. Trump has postponed US strikes on Iranian power plants for 5 days, saying the US is getting close to meeting our objectives, and hinting at winding down military efforts. Iran denies any negotiations are happening. The war is 4 weeks old. The strait remains closed. Oil is expensive, and 20 nations are watching each other's next move.
Strikes on Iranian power plants for 5 days after he'd set a deadline over the weekend demanding that Iran fully open the Strait of Hormuz by tonight or face its power plants being obliterated. Hours before Trump's post, overnight, Israel launched what the Israeli military called a wide-scale wave of strikes targeting Iranian terror regime infrastructure in Tehran. Israel's impatience may have come from this.
Is this World War III? Probably not yet. Iran is strategically isolated. It has no real allies willing to fight for it directly. China wants the oil flowing, not the war escalating. Russia is assisting from a distance, not committing troops. But the structure of this conflict means it's genuinely difficult to contain. The US isn't fighting from its own territory. It's fighting from dozens of bases across a region Iran can reach. Every strike, every counterstrike, brings new countries to the edge. We are watching the war that could define the next decade unfold in real time. Pay attention.